I welcome to you all this lovely event. My name is Lukasz Hacura, and I run Anshar Studios for the last 13 years. And we are a PC and console AA developer from Katowice. So while I'll be talking about the state of the industry, overall, keep in mind that my expertise lies solely in PC and console games. I'm in no shape or form ready to discuss mobile gaming market. So yeah, something that you all are, I'm sure, aware of. 2023 was rough, and there was a lot of earthquakes, and despite the fact that we had some really good releases, right? Like Baldur's Gate 3, like Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2. So it was a very good year for gaming, not a very good year for game dev. And then we started 2024 very strong with continuing the trend, and it was basically not good. And now we are going into 2025, and guess what? We are still at it, right? So the question that I get asked a lot is, actually two questions, is why is this happening? And when will it stop? And I'm gonna try to answer at least one of those questions here. So first, there is a lot of discourse here on the events, on other events, online, on social media, everywhere, is like, why is this happening? And there are a lot of theories, a lot of analysis, presentations, etc. COVID is thrown a lot, like, hey, we're more at home, we had more time, we spend more money on video games. Obviously, the global political scene has changed, right, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So what it meant for a lot of businesses is that they went more defensive, more risk-averse. In effect, there was an interest rate increase, so the capital has become much more expensive. The investor bubble, there are a lot of money invested in 2019, 2020, 2021, a lot of money that didn't earn money back, right? They didn't have a return on investment. So there was a declining disenchantment, you might say, of the investor sector with the game development scene. And you have all these companies that, because of the easy access to capital previously, they were heavily leveraged, right? So if I'm a publisher and I have $10 million of my own cash, I can use this $10 million to acquire $100 million of not of my own cash, which means I'm 10x leveraged, but I can invest 10 times more. And if the capital is cheap, this is awesome, right? But when suddenly capital stopped being cheap, suddenly this is highly inefficient and I have a lot of debt. Some even blame AI for it, that, hey, people are losing jobs because we're, I don't know, exchanging people with robots apparently or something. But there are those out there that are blaming AI for this situation. And obviously there's a clear market saturation, right? The amount of video games that are being created is increased, and we are fighting not only with other video games, but in general, we're fighting for the attention of our audiences, right? So we're fighting movies, we're fighting TV streaming, we're fighting everything. Post-COVID, we're even fighting outdoor attractions because people tend now to spend more time outdoors. And on top of that, inside video games themselves, the market saturation is so high that there are estimates that around 20% of your time during a year, of average players' time during a year, is for the new releases, because 80% of the time is spent on the games that have been released previously, right? Because people are still playing, I don't know, Roblox, Minecraft, League of Legends, Overwatches, Tarkovs, or whatever else that is their basically hobby. So you're actually, you might say, hey, but the video game industry is growing, it's great, but you're actually targeting, when you release a new game, you're targeting like, at best, 20% of that market, and that's even not taking any types of genre into consideration, right? Your actual target audience size into consideration. But this is actually not the theories I want to dwell on, okay? So there are a lot of really good discussions online about it. One of the best presentations by Matthew Ball, I'm sure that a lot of you have seen it. It has 227 slides. We're not going to go through it, no worries. I'm just throwing it out there that I don't necessarily agree 100% with every conclusion from that presentation, but the amount of research data and amount of work that went into putting this together is impressive, and I'm sure that you will find it interesting. So, what I think, what I personally think is underneath all of that, and bear with me, because I really love video games, and I really loved Alan Wake 2. But I think that that's a part of a bigger problem. Now, Alan Wake 2 was a very well-received game by a very respected studio, right? Respectful also, but respected studio. It had a very good response from the community, right? I cannot check Steam because it was an Epic exclusive, but still, if you look at the user score on Metacritic, it's very positive. If you look at the score on PlayStation, it's very positive. 31K reviews with 4.76. It's a very good review. And if you look at the amount of nominations and the amount of awards this game has won, keep in mind it's a year of Spider-Man 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, right? I'm 100% sure that if those two, if Alan Wake was like alone, let's say, in that trio, it would won much more awards than it did in 2023. And yet, such a game has these headlines. Oh, sorry, wait a second. One more thing, my late night edition, spoiler alert, but it's also responsible for one of my best gaming moments, maybe not in my life, but I would say that in a decade easily, right? The musical inside a game, absolutely amazing. And yet, this is the headlines, right? The headline a couple of months ago was Remedy's fastest selling game hasn't recouped the development costs. And just a couple months later, it was finally, okay, Alan Wake 2 recoups its cost, right? Obviously, this is just an example, and obviously, I'm not trying to diss Remedy, and especially Remedy developers, right? They did an amazing job. I had much fun playing this game. But for years now, the production costs of video games grew faster than the sense of spending this money. This is the root of all the problems from my perspective. Everything else was just a catalyst. Everything else was just putting us more to sleep about that fact. But this is the problem for over a decade. It's not a recent problem. We just got hit by consequences recently. We're a hit-driven business where no one can predict a hit. And on that, I recommend a great book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, The Black Swan. But in short, and I don't want to offend anybody, which is somebody saying something before they want to offend somebody, when somebody tells you that they know that it's going to be a hit, they're full of shit, right? They don't know. Nobody knows. You can actually tell if something's going to be shit with a high certainty that it's going to happen, but you cannot predict a hit. And we're in a hit-driven business, so what are we even doing here? We're basically gambling. It's just that the stakes are increasing. We're spending more money at the casino. That's what's happening. So what I also hear online a lot, and on this discourse about the crisis, is that a particular segment, because of that, is dead, right? It's AA's is dead, and that threatens the entire gaming industry. Or AAA's are dead. Or it's the end of the indie game industry as we know it. I cut that part out because it wasn't tragic enough. But it's the end of the indie game industry, right? And I honestly believe that that's not the case in any of those. It's not that any of those particular segments are dead. It's just that every segment is currently too expensive, right? We need to learn how to do a AAA game on a AA budget, how to do a AA game on an indie budget, how to do an indie premium game on an indie budget. And indies, well, we're back to 1-2-person teams, you know, doing it after hours while having a day job. That's basically it, right? We need Kingdom Come Deliverance. That's a AAA that costed a AA amount, right? Fair. Most of the reason was the origin of the developer, right? Because the same game developed in California has a AAA budget. But yeah, that's part of the issue, right? It's we need to learn how to spend less money making games. There are great articles out there about Citizen Sleeper 2, how it was developed basically without programming, using a lot of tools, right? Leveraging engines, leveraging technology, not using a lot of man-months, true indie approach. And the problem that I see in video games is not something that is new. In 2013, there was a great article, and I also encourage you to read it. It actually hurts when you read it, from my perspective. So what is killing the AAA gaming? Goddamn turtles. So this article was about Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Because in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, you can swim to an island, you can find a turtle. This turtle is nice, it has a nice model, it has a nice custom animation, and you have a scanning functionality, you can scan the turtle. And then the turtle is added to your encyclopedia. And you have a special entries in the encyclopedia about turtles. And I ask you, why the hell is scanning turtles a part of I'm a badass pirate assassin fantasy game, right? Why? Why? These are thrown away man-months. And again, I'm not trying to diss Ubisoft developers. Good developers. They tried really hard. And they did the job that they were asked to do, right? But why? Obviously, there is this pressure from all over that, hey, this is something that is required from a AAA game. AAA game needs to be this, this, and that. This is what we need to challenge. This is what we need to basically get back from and retreat. We need to find a way to a sustainable game development. And I truly believe that if you're very careful about how you spend your money, players won't care. Players just won't care. Again, not trying to diss on any developers, but Kingdom Come Deliverance UI is awful. It's not good. Nobody cares. Apparently, the target group of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 doesn't require for the UI and UX to be top-notch AAA, Western AAA level, right? People love different things about this game. And there are many examples of that, is that if you're trying to be the absolutely best in every area of a video game. We are all basically trying to be the next, I don't know, Red Dead Redemption, right? This is a reverse slippery slope where you're always chasing a bigger game. So that's my personal analysis of the why. And I'm sure that afterwards there will be a lot of people who's going to say, want to talk to me about it and say why I'm wrong. I'm here, and I'm open to those discussions and looking forward to them. But now I wanted to move a little bit from, okay, we're in this, and in my opinion, it's not going anywhere, right? It's not like the things are going to come back to 2019, 2020 levels. This is the new reality we live in. So what can you do? There are a lot of companies out there, and Anshar Studios was one of them in 2023, and a little bit of 24. There are a lot of companies out there that are struggling, right? That they got their projects canceled, that the time to close on the business side has increased. Basically, they have a problem of securing their day-to-day operations. So what can we do about it? So first, in short term, cash flow obviously is king, right? Like, we can discuss high-level strategy, we can discuss where the industry is going in the next 5 years, but it all doesn't matter if you don't have how to pay your salaries next month. Basically, cash flow is king. And the most important thing we all need to focus on when we're in this situation, when we don't have a decent runway, again, different, let's say, there are different practices about what is a decent runway, right? Some say it should be at least 3 months, some say it should be 6 months, some say it should be a year. But it should be something that allows you to make a little bit of mistakes and allows you to actually maneuver around your BizDev in a way that you don't need to absolutely hit every milestone and sign every agreement that comes your way. Because if you're always counting on a 100% success rate, you're going to fail. So how do you focus on extending a runway? How do you do that? So first of all, you need to understand your cost structure. A lot of studios, especially smaller ones, and especially not studios that come from big corporations, they have a problem with controlling, right? And by controlling, I mean the branch of finance. So they judge their financial healthiness by the amount of money in the bank, right? Which is definitely not enough to be able to understand what is your runway. By introducing controlling, like an advanced controlling mechanisms into your company, like basically some kind of a business intelligence system with your accounting, with your finance people, and figuring out, okay, this is how much we pay for this is how much we pay for this is actually required for this project, this for this project, and understand where the money is going out. And then you cut absolutely everything that is not essential to your current operations. Meaning, I have a deal signed with a publisher. I want to hit this and this milestone, because if I don't hit that, I have a cash flow issues. So what do I need to hit that milestone? Do I need all the licenses that I have here? Maybe I can lower the level of licensing on, for example, I don't know, Miro or Jira or Confluence, or maybe I can switch from paid Slack to Teams, right? Because I'm an Office.com company and Teams is free, although everybody hates it, right? But it's free. So you need to really dig into that and cut everything that is non-essential. And you need to be transparent about it with your employees. I truly believe that if we keep our employees in the dark of what is the financial situation of our company, we're doing them a disservice. Some people say, hey, we just don't want them to worry. We want them to focus on the task at hand. The problem is that they're reading everything around, and they are worried, and they want to know what you, as a leader of your company, right, what are you doing to make sure that your company survives? Now, on the business side, what is happening, what I'm seeing all over, is that time to close has skyrocketed, right? If you had a decent demo of a game, I would say that your time to close under normal circumstances would be between, I would say, up to 6 months, right? Between 3 to 6 months. It was very unusual, not impossible, but unusual to sign underneath that. Right now, time to close is 6 to whatever, 6 to 9 to 12 to 18. The princess is always in the next castle. You're meeting with a publisher on GDC. They're saying, yeah, it's a great build. It's a great build. Just show us a little bit more. We're going to meet at Gamescom. Meet them at Gamescom, right? And it's like, it's really, let's meet at DICE, etc. So the castle is, the princess is always in the next castle. And right now, it's thawing a bit. It's changing a bit into the plus. But in general, publishers are very risk averse. So they want a very advanced build to invest in. So that, like, the perfect scenario would be you just need 200K to finish your game, and it's going to be launched in 4 months, and there's going to be immediate cash flow out of that, right? That's like a perfect scenario for a lot of publishers. So keep in mind that right now, time to close when you're trying to raise a lot of money is much longer. So you can never be, until it's not signed, it's not signed. You can never be optimistic. So I think that we actually can't be discouraged by the situation saying that there's no money out there and lessen our efforts. We actually need to double down on our efforts as biz devs and generate much more leads and work much more harder parallelly with diversification of our angle of attacks, not counting that we're going to sign a particular deal, even if it looks good. And I'm talking from experience. In 2023, I had a deal locked down for a big AA remake of a great RPG. It was our dream project. But then Embracer fell apart, and there was no deal, right? It was not signed, and we ran in a bit of a trouble there. Another thing is, because the cost structure is such a big problem right now, especially in the West, right? Like, the California man month is absolutely crazy compared to basically the rest of the world, right? And a lot of American companies are gonna look right now at their cost structure, and they're gonna shift how they look at developing AAA games, right? They wanna say, okay, we've been doing this with 300 people, now we need to figure out how to do it with 100, and co-dev the rest of it with other places in the world, with the South, South America, with the East, with Europe, with Eastern Europe, and outsource it to lower our costs. And that's an opportunity for us. There is a high influx right now for developers that can engage in a co-dev type of deal. There is a really good opportunity. There's a high increase of those on the business side. And the good news is that they usually have they're low risk because they're like not milestone based, but time and material based, right? So your cash flow is not at risk. That's one thing. And the second thing, time to close is usually shorter on this one, right? You can get those deal signs in much less than 6 months if you're lucky. But you need to know who to talk to. Basically, you need to know where the money is. You need to be very intelligent with your time. Well, who am I spending my time trying to sign with? What is the current strategy of that potential publisher or partner? Do they even have money? Because every publisher is going to always say to you that, yes, we're looking at titles. Yes, we're seeking, we're scouting, we're looking to sign. but none of all of them are actually looking to sign because they have top management blockage. They cannot sign something until something else happens, and actually you're just both wasting your time. So doing this business intelligence in a sense where the money is, right? And it's both on the company side and it's both on the geopolitical side, right? Like for example, this segment where the money is in Asia, the money's in Saudi Arabia, like people that are backed by those companies, they usually have money, right? Obviously, the geopolitical situation is very tricky because does China have money, for example? Of course they have money, right? But there are other forces at play here that makes getting this money harder than it was basically before the election. So, so what I'm trying to say here is don't necessarily operate under the assumptions that you had from a year ago or 2 years ago that, for example, this publisher was looking for money up to tier, I don't know, $2 million, because maybe right now they're looking only for projects up to 500K, or maybe they're unlocked because Saudi Arabia invested in them and they're looking for $10 million deals. You don't know that until you don't go to events like this one, you don't talk to people, you don't do some business intelligence, you don't do a simple Googling and look at the financial reports of people. Basically, talk with people with money, right? Use your time wisely. And I know that this is a very hard advice for smaller companies, for indies, but to diversify the risk as much as possible. I'm always dreading when a company is dependent on a single contract. It's like one publisher, and if the invoice is not paid by that one publisher, this company is screwed, right? So it's always, it's a tricky one because you need to hire more people, you need to have more people, you need to have more contracts, you need to do more biz dev. So this is kind of a escaping forward kind of a strategy, which only, I would say, like a medium-sized and larger companies can actually afford. But I don't know how, from the stress perspective, people function under only like dependence from one legal entity, right? This is a very stressful situation to be in. And I would say, elephant in the room, like laying off people is one of the hardest things you need to do as a manager, as a business owner. The problem is that video game development, if you count licenses as part of the overheads of the people you hire, right? So you don't just count the salaries, but you count everything that comes into the cost of employing a person in game development. Suddenly your cost structure is 90% is employees. So let's be realistic. If you want to do any type of runway extension, how can you do that without firing people when 90% of your costs are salaries? So either you get more money coming in, or the only actual feasible way to save money in game dev, however cruel it sounds, is laying people off. So this is like a high-level outline of what I'm trying to convey in like a short term of things that we can do. I made an article about it last year, and I checked it. It's still pretty accurate. Not much has changed in the industry in the sense of we're still trying to survive. Where I go in a bit more detail on those things, and I recommend you to have a read. But what I think in long term, as an industry, right? What I think we need to do. As I mentioned previously, I strongly believe that we need to, whatever our usual budget, whatever our usual approach was, whatever we were doing AAAs before, or AAs or indies or whatever, we need to start spending less on a video game. We need to be much more deliberate about where we put our money. Is this a core feature? Is this a core system? Is this an essence of my game, of the player fantasy? That's thing number one. And thing number two is basically scope, right? Right now, with everything that is out there, with the amount of content that is out there, there is a very limited amount of games that you can commit to that take 100 hours to finish, right? And that's why you don't need the turtles. Because actually not a lot of people want to spend 100 hours in a single player game. And even if they do want to, do you want to be in a situation when somebody finishes your game and it's like, oh my God, finally? Or do you want to be in a position where somebody finishes your game and they're hungry for more? They want a sequel, they want a DLC, they want whatever else, right? We don't need as big games as we think we do. But of course, there are other ways to leverage that, right? Technology, engine, middleware, codev, AI, whatever it takes to decrease your usual budget. Not to be all gloomy, if you look at the history of basically anything, but tech and video games also, whenever there's a crisis of this size, something changes. The status quo changes. There is some type of a new knowledge that is getting discovered, some new innovation, maybe a new way to sell games, maybe a new way to create games, maybe a new way to advertise games, new way to distribute games, who knows? You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, probably some genius is going to figure it out and they're going to win big time. But from my perspective, being prepared to that change. And what do I mean by that as Anshar Studios? I truly believe that there's not going to be any type of revolution on the input side. That's my bet. If you look at the evolution of gamepad, I mean, yes, it's much better than it used to be 30 years ago, but essentially it's the same idea, right? It's not reinvented in any shape or form. And I truly believe that until we don't figure out how to hook a video game to our mind, I don't think it's going to change. So my bet is that if we go gamepad first, basically design, we're going to be prepared for anything else that's going to happen. And the second part of that is I truly believe that whatever's going to happen is going to still happen in the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to happen on a screen, right? It's not going to be a hologram. Again, it's not going to be a jack into our head. So it's going to be a screen. I don't know what type of a screen is going to be. Is it going to be a TV? Is it going to be a new console attached to a TV? Is it going to be streaming from our consoles are going to go away and we're going to do only streaming? I don't care. My bet is screen and a gamepad. That's it. So we try to position ourselves that whoever comes up with something next, right? Like, hey, this is a new way to develop games for streaming. This is a new way to develop games on this new platform. This is the new way. We try to be, it's hell of a lot to have a first mover advantage, to be first, than to be the best, right? It's much easier. So I truly believe that something's going to change. While I'm skeptical, maybe it's going to be the metaverse, right? Maybe it's and by metaverse I mean maybe we're going to find a way to distribute things first through types of environments like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever else, right? I don't know what it's going to be, but I want to be prepared, and I don't want to like say that, hey, we as a company, we're only going to, I don't know, launch on Epic, for example, or something like that. But whatever it's going to be, I'm very optimistic that because of the crisis, something's going to change and things are going to get even more interesting. And lastly, in the long term, I do believe that we need to focus more. It still comes back to those turtles. We need to focus more on what type of a game are we doing, and do we truly understand the audience that we're trying to game the make for? What do they will judge us for? What do they will say that they are missing, and what they won't care about missing, right? And focus on the absolute essentials and make them the best you absolutely can while cutting all the fat, right? We in game development have a tendency, first of all, every specialization has a tendency to do the absolute best they're able to do because we're creative, intelligent people who want to do our best work. So it's very hard to contain it in a sense, no, this is actually, in this area, this is our quality bar, not the best you can do, this is the quality bar, right? And second of all, and I think it's in general a human condition, but I know that in Polish video game development, this is something very strong, is like the belief that I know what player wants because I want this as a player, right? And why I truly believe that you need to have that spark, that you need to have that, the video game needs to be partially the author's work, and it needs to be something that they want to create, because without that we won't have the authenticity. It stops being an art and starts being something that basically is soulless, and people will pick up on that. But it cannot be only that, because this is not patronage, right? We're not getting paid to do art, right? Somebody wants to make money out of this, so this is entertainment. This is not patronage. So we need to take into account, hey, this is what we're creating. Is there a target audience for it? How big is it? Do we understand them, right? Do we know what other games they're playing? And while I think that we're getting a little bit better at it, and especially also there are some publishers out there that are starting to like get really better at it and understand their core audience, right? And what they truly want and need. Like from the top of my head, Paradox is such a publisher, right? That understands their core audience and knows what to do and what not to do inside the genre they're operating on. But I still think that there is a lot to do here. So, and I specifically picked games that I don't think are bad to showcase what we shouldn't do, right? We shouldn't do game decks. If you don't know game deck, it's an isometric RPG done by Anshar Studios. And it was one of my dream projects. So if I could pitch you into one sentence, it's a great pitch. Wait for it. It's Disco Elysium, but worse. So the problem is that game deck, it's not a bad game. If you look at the reviews, right, we like jump between 79 and 80 at Steam. We have 70 plus Metacritic, 72 I think. It's a good game, it's a nice game, and there are people that played 100 hours of game deck. I don't know why, because it's a game for 12 hours, but there are people who played 100 hours of game deck. It was just too expensive for the target audience, right? For the people who read a lot, who write detective, basically RPG-ish branching narrative games. Not everybody can be Disco Elysium. Game deck would be a very good game, I mean very successful game, if it was 4 times cheaper to develop, basically. Alan Wake 2 is a much better game than game deck. It's a great game, right? But I truly believe that it shouldn't be 20 hours long. Like who played Alan Wake? Okay, about, I would say, 1/5 of the audience played Alan Wake 2? Who finished Alan Wake 2? Yeah, exactly my point, right? Why? It didn't need to be 20-hour game, right? And that's just an example of a thing you could cut on the budget, is the scope of the game. Guardians of the Galaxy was a great game. It was a really good game, but it was done on a AAA budget, not with a AAA audience for this type of a game. So what I'm trying to say is, we need to be very, very intentional with what we're doing, right? Like Plague Tale Requiem had a ridiculously low budget. Space Marine in some areas looks like a AAA, in some areas it definitely doesn't look like a AAA, and it is reflected in the budget. It was a very sensible budget, right? I don't know if it's public, so I'm not gonna say it, but it was a very sensible budget. Lies of P, even lower budget than Space Marine, right? This is the types of, and they went the scope way, right? It's not as big as other Souls games, right? But it sold immensely well. So I strongly believe that we need to be much more intentional about how we spend our money in video games, and don't wait around for like a turnaround, right? The storm is the new thing. There's no like surviving it while doing the things that we used to do. That's what I strongly believe in. And that's it from me. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Lukasz. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll come.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. It's kind of useful, to be honest. And I get just an argument regarding the creating the game and creating the AAA, AA game. I guess that's business question is not only the questions that's well, not the only question regarding the fail or creating the game, but also regarding the similarity of the AAA games that we are having right now. I guess for 10 years they are kind of similar for now. There are kind of 2 or 3 games that were kind of unique, and this is also one of the crucial arguments that's we are seeing right now that game industry is failing. Maybe you can comment that.
So yeah, I hear this argument a lot from the internet. Even when you read X or Facebook or whatever, is that yeah, those lazy game developers that are just not innovative, not creative enough, and they're creating shit, and that's why it's good that there is a crisis. Screw them. Obviously, I kind of don't agree with that. While I do think that there are certain things that we think is standard, that is a fat that should be cut out, and in that sense, it might sometimes seem that the game we're creating are similar, but I honestly believe that it's not a problem of creativity in that sense as the problem of business expectations out of the project, right? So if you create a really good creative box for good developers, they're gonna come up with amazing stuff. The thing is that some business creative box just suck. Like take, again, nothing against the devs, but take Suicide Squad, right? What previous games those people did, right? And now it's suddenly, oh, you're very good at this, but please create a games as a service game, right? They were not equipped to deliver upon it, right? For example. So I truly believe that if you challenge the team and give them like, on the one hand, a tight creative box for the budget, target audience, etc., but on the other hand, inside that creative box, you give them freedom, game developers are gonna do an awesome job. That's what I believe.
Hey, thank you for, oh, yes, sure, I can. Sorry. I just wanted to ask what you think is a healthy split between development costs and marketing costs. Because we talked a lot about cost now, and we see we have to cut cost a lot in development process. But what about marketing? Because from my perspective, it got worse and worse every year. It's more expensive than ever to actually have ads, content creators, and stuff like this. So what would you say is a healthy mix here?
The big problem here is in what segment are you in, right? Like if you take, for example, I don't know, Doom Dark Ages, that's going to come out, right? This is Bethesda. They're going to have a ridiculous marketing budget, which probably going to rival the development budget, right? Because this is something that they done in the past. Do I think it's too much? Yes. Do I have an idea what it should be in a AAA segment? Not let's say my area of expertise, right? In something that I see from I would say AA perspective, or maybe even indie premium perspective, I would say that something between 20+ % of your development budget for me doesn't sound ridiculous, right? 50% development budget for 50% of the development budget for marketing for a AA game, for example, for me sounds way too much. That's my gut feeling. At indies, actually, right now, at that indie level, and I'm shooting myself on the foot here because Anshar Studios does have its own publishing label, Anshar Publishing, which is an indie publishing label. But I don't think you need expensive marketing. It's just that it gotten really technical in terms how to play around with Steam, how to know a certain amount of things about how platforms work. There's a real value here on the side of the know-how, how to do it, but it doesn't necessarily require a lot of money. So I think that if you're an indie, if you can afford somehow to have like a very dedicated person that is trying to, I'm going to figure this out, right? I'm going to figure out Steam. I'm going to figure out first parties. I'm going to figure out how to basically handle distribution from that perspective. I think you can do it on your own, but you need to have a person. You can't be a dev on the team, right? If not, take a small boutique publisher, like Anshar Publishing, but there are others, right? Like, I don't know, Untold Tales. There are other publishers out there that really know their craft, and they won't take a lot of revenue, and they also not going to spend a lot of money, but they know how to do it, right? So on an indie budget, I would say it would be even less than 20%, right, from that perspective. There was a question here. Yeah, here. This person, yeah, you? No, nobody.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah. I mean, I've got the answer in my head. So, but I can. Thanks for your presentation, for your perspective. So, based on like your arguments are completely like. They have sense, and I don't like this future, to be honest, because well, it means that like the games that I truly love, they coming mostly from the States, and looks like the guys from States are doomed right now because well,
yes.
Yeah, and so my question is that do you think that the games that having a lot of cool, like, small features, like probably few players out of 100 will notice, like animation on face underwater and stuff like that, which cost a lot of money. Will we see those, cool features in the future?
I truly believe we will. It's just going to come from two places. It's either going to come from those couple of companies that are going to be on the top of the food chain, right? I don't think that Rockstar right now is having this, oh, we need to lower the budgets of our games because there's a crisis. And no, I don't think there's this discussion at Rockstar right now, right? So we're still gonna see some of the companies develop absolutely top-notch games because they are on the top of the food chain and they're earning the big bucks. So that's one part. And the second part, I also truly believe, if you look at the tools and if you look at what is happening overall, I think that when a company such as Naughty Dog, right, for example, when they achieve a pinnacle in something, like for example in animation, I truly believe that very quickly a tool set follows that very cheaply allows to have 70–80% of that quality, after a couple of years, of course, right? So yes, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of games that are going to be on the bleeding edge, only a couple of them. But overall, obviously, because of the knowledge share, because of the technology progression, because of the tools progression, etc., we'll keep gonna seeing better games. I think there was a question here. Yeah.
So we were talking a lot about cutting fat of the games, and I absolutely agree that, firstly, thank you for the insightful presentation. I absolutely agree that we shouldn't have the turtles in our games. But how do we avoid cutting the muscle tissue, the organs, the important features? How do you think can we avoid that while cutting the fat out of our games?
So not changing into a UXR talk, right? User experience research talk or playtesting talk. I will maybe share like one great tidbit that we learned from 11-bit studios. I don't know if they're still using it, but back in the day when they were showcasing a game on the floor, like on Gamescom or whatever,
yes,
they were doing questionnaires. And while those questionnaires sometimes were extensive, some in-depth questions, blah, 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 the most important part for them was, what did you like about the game the most? And what did you hate about the game the most? And how much overall did you like the game, right? So one feature, and how did you like the game? And how they approached it is, if somebody rated the game less than 7 out of 10, in general, they threw that feedback out. It's like, that's not our target audience, right? And then when somebody actually scored the game high, they looked at the feature they hated most, and they're like, we're not spending money to fix it because it's too expensive. We're going to cut this. And they were laser focused on the ones that their target audience said they were enjoying about the game the most, right? And they said, okay, all our UX or our efforts should go into this, right? So I think in short, it would say, listen to your players, do some playtests, right? To make it short, but I really like that that approach from 11-bit studios. I honestly don't know if they do that still, but that was my discussion a couple of years back.
So you're saying to make open-ended questionnaires
yes.
and validate them through the closed ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
you might say.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I wonder, because at the end you mentioned about the game deck, that overall it was good game, had good rating, but it was just too expensive. And I wonder that as you now talking about the cutting the cost and looking at the bug, do you believe that you as an Anshar were able to deliver this game, maybe cut some content, some quality, but still deliver in the similar shape, or from the start it was just too expensive?
No, from the start it was a bad idea. I mean, bad idea. I love the idea, I love the game. But from the start it was a bad fit to try to hit this size of a game for this target audience. And that's one point. Another, this was the first RPG Anshar Studios worked on. So by definition, it was suboptimal, right? Obviously, we would do much better job right now, but there is a big reason why we're not doing Game Deck 2. And again, love you Fool's Theory, love you 11-bit studios, but Game Deck 2, it's kind of thaumaturge, and there's a reason why we're not doing Game Deck 2. As far as I know, thaumaturge didn't also return on the investment, right? So yeah, some games just are too big for the target audience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Thank you very much.